Hi, everyone. Hope you're all well. I am super excited. I feel like I'm excited every week, but it's true. I'm super excited to be here. I am joining live from various different places, including our Facebook group, our free Facebook group, Women Who Podcast or Want to. I'm also streaming on LinkedIn and also Instagram. So thank you for being here. We have been rocking and rolling over the last 4 weeks. I come on live once a week, sometimes on Tuesdays, sometimes on Fridays, depending on just my schedule. But we've been consistent, which is something to be really happy and proud of. I'm very proud of that. So today, I really wanted to chat with you about repurposing our podcast episodes and our podcast content. And I don't want to talk about like the typical things that people talk about repurposing, like repurpose it to IG Reels and, audiograms. And like we've beaten that. We've beaten that a lot. And we've heard that for the last 4 years. I want us to be thinking strategically. I want us to be thinking money. If you follow me for a while, depending on what brand you started following me from, like I talk about financial independence. I talk about wanting to retire early at the age of 40. So I am a bit away from that goal, but as I am, whether it was a side hustle or it is through my business, I'm always thinking about monetization in a way that feels authentic, organic, that feels good to me. So my lens today is going to be all on, okay, we're going to repurpose this, but how can we repurpose our episodes to make us income, generate revenue at the end of the day? So, hopefully when you think of me, you're like, yeah, Danielle knows how to make money and she wants to make money so she can retire early. So that's like my big like through line of why I'm like just so excited and passionate. And I think podcasting is a great vehicle for making money. Do I think it's the simplest? I don't think it's the simplest. I think there's a lot of challenges with podcasting, but I do see a lot of people pursuing podcasting as either a side hustle or as their full-time job. All right. So before we get started, just going to introduce myself really quickly. I'm Danielle Desir Corbett. I'm a podcast marketing coach, also founder of Women of Color Podcasters. Again, like I said, I love strategically podcasting so that we can grow our audiences, hit our income goals, including becoming a full-time podcaster if that's something that you so choose. So after this call, if you're like, Danielle, I definitely want to work with you, I want to learn more about your one-on-one coaching program, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm very accessible and I do check my DMs. So just wanted to put that out there. All right. So today we're talking about repurposing our podcast. And I have 7 plus a bonus tip also of like how we can think about repurposing. So repurposing our podcast is really just taking this long form piece of content and remixing it to something else. So it is being strategic, it is being efficient, and being creative. And like I mentioned earlier, it's not only about taking that audio form and like chopping it up. Like that's just one way for you to repurpose. But I'm talking about like how do we repurpose this long form content to make more money, to make more tangential content, and to continue to push our business in the forward direction. With that being said, what you can think about the number one strategy you could, it's not number one technically, but like a strategy. So a strategy you could think about is turning your podcast episodes into book chapters or an anthology. So this is something that I am actually pursuing this year. I have this really big overarching book that encompasses my whole life and my whole brand. And I kind of want to put it out there in the world, but I don't necessarily have the time or capacity to like sit down and do it from start to finish all in written content. So one way I am working on this is by, okay, outlining different chapters and seeing which chapters would be most relevant to talk about on the podcast and use that as like inspiration and motivation to kind of get large chunks of my book done. So I definitely feel like doing your book, using your podcast to transform it into a book can be an option, being really intentional in that, or an anthology, meaning that you have various contributors and voices, which could technically be your podcast guests. So if you do an interview show and you have, let's say, you've had like hundreds of business owners or women on your podcast, maybe that can be transformed into an anthology with permission from all your guests, of course. But these are the types of like creative ways that we can repurpose our like amazingly strong content into another form that can really continue to serve our people. The second strategy is turning your podcast episodes into signature talks for different speaking engagements. And this is one of the things that I love working with my clients on, is that all of this knowledge that you're sharing on your show, especially these like solo monologue shows, episodes, like you can actually figure out how a way to pitch this to different conferences and events and summits and even inside memberships, right? Like, let's not forget there's a lot of people who have like closed containers that are looking for guest speakers, including me, for Women of Color podcasters. So if you have an idea of how you can serve, or a strategy for how you can serve podcasters, please reach out to me. I have a stage for you. But yes, it's like you can use your podcast as a testing ground to really flesh out your signature talks, or your various types of talks that you have. Like for me, I have about 3 signature talks, and every year I kind of like, remix it and reimagine a new talk. So you could use your podcast as that like breathing ground to really like figure that out. So I think that's super cool. Another thing you could do is like vice versa too, is like you can actually take your speaking engagements and your signature talks and repurpose that into podcast episodes. Okay. So you could go forward, make it into a speaking engagement, but take your speaking engagements and turn it around and put it on your podcast. Especially if your podcast is all about like your personal brand and building your thought leadership. And if it's helpful content to your listeners and audiences, why not? Right? Like I'm trying to do a better job this year at like removing these silos. Like I kind of feel like speaking is speaking and then podcasting is podcasting. But how about if I just kind of took down the walls of like what I think like is here and there, and kind of make it fluid and make my brand this like, this fluid, there's a fluidity that I feel like I'm trying to figure out a little bit more this year. And I definitely see the opportunity for speaking. And actually one of my clients, this is exactly what we're working on, is like, okay, like your podcast is the place for you to be testing out these speaking topics, to get feedback and to make yourself, an even stronger speaker and keynote speaker. So that is definitely an opportunity for repurposing. Another opportunity for repurposing, so opportunity number 3, is to actually use your podcast episodes to pitch different brands and also pitch podcast guest appearances. So one of the things I'm really big on is when you are pitching, whether it's to get paid through a sponsorship or through a podcast collaboration with another podcaster, is showing proof actually. Like you can tell me that you're an expert on XYZ, but if you don't have links to your content, if you don't have like something I could just skim and that further proves your expertise, it's a no. I reject 99% of pitches that get sent to me because there's just things that are missing, which I'm sure I think we can definitely talk about, like how to really craft a compelling pitch, but use your existing content to further whatever initiatives that you have going on. So whenever I'm reaching out to a brand that I want to work with, I'm always linking, hey, this is something similar I did here. So even though it's not taking that content and like remixing it, but it's showcasing that content into a new face and a new vision and a new space. I think that's super important. So use your episodes as a way to help you secure other opportunities, which is really helpful. Okay, I'm going to take a little pause here to check the comments because I feel like I haven't been looking at the comments. But KJ around the world, hello. Hey, Danielle. Hello. Nice to see you. Did you enjoy your nap? And then let's see. Hi, everybody here on Instagram. I hope you're well. If you have any comments or thoughts about today's discussion, like feel free to let me know and pop them in the chat. Again, we're talking about repurposing and creative repurposing, not just chopping up our content, but like how do we actually move our businesses forward through this content that we are creating on a weekly, monthly basis. All right. So strategy number 4 is creating a companion episode with your commentary, especially if you have an interview show. If you have a monologue show, it might be kind of like difficult. Like I said everything I had to say in that episode. There's no like back commentary. But if you have a interview based show and you're talking with someone, you may say, you know what, I'm going to record a mini-sode after this and just share with them my thoughts. Because a lot of times when you're hosting like an interview show, you don't get to like sit with the content on the call and like really debrief and you're kind of having a conversation most of the time. So if you're able to say, okay, I'm going to do a companion episode because this episode was like so good, you can do a one-off companion episode, or it could be part of your, production where it's like you have your main episodes and then you have your commentary episodes if you have an interview-based show. So I see a few podcasters who do this. So I think that's really nice. I do love hearing the interviews, but I also love hearing their fresh perspectives and like why they asked the guests to be on the episode, on the show, their biggest insights and aha moments. And it just deepens the conversation and allows us to really like get into more of the nitty gritty in a non-conversational way, if that makes sense. With that being said, you can also do a live stream where you're chatting with your community and continuing the conversation more casual, but you're hopping on a live stream like this, like Instagram, and you're just saying like, okay, last week we talked all about travel hacking through brand partnerships, and which I did talk about this week, but travel hacking through brand partnerships, and like, what did you think about it? And you kind of like riff back and forth with your people. This is a great opportunity for you to engage your people wherever they're at, whether that's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, or whatever social platform, but also to remind them that, hey, listen, I have a podcast episode that goes in depth with this that you would really love. So I love it. It's like a two-parter. It's an engagement piece, but it's also promotion piece for your podcast. What I will say about this live streaming component is that it is a time commitment, right? So for me, I usually do these lives every week, and it's like about a 30-minute live, but the back end, there's still back end. I have to think about what I want to talk about. I have to kind of prepare and outline. So it is there's a time investment there. But if your goal is to engage your audience, to attract people to your show, this could be a good strategy for you to test out. And this could be something that you test out for a month and say, okay, I did it for a month and let's see how it works. Did I like it? Did I not like it? Like, was it helpful? Was it not helpful? So again, this is just another way that you can use your content and inspire it and remix it into something else. Okay, so Detroit World Podcast. Hi, Detroit World Podcast says, I've used my podcast episodes and have been able to convert them into written articles. You hit the nail on the head. I am literally going to say that. That's another item on the list. But yeah, let me tell you, I think about like, I would say I've been repurposing my podcasts and blog posts for a while now, but I would say like a 15, 20-minute podcast episode is like thousands, like 2,000 words. And in the blogging world, like 2,000 words is like pretty good, So definitely agree. There's a lot of power in blogging, and we'll definitely keep on talking about blogging because that's number 7 on my list. Also, Jess Rock says, yes, I do IG Live episode release after party 1 week after I release an episode. I love that, Jess Rock. You know why I love that so much? Because it gives your people space, right? It's like, I have the episode go live, and then a week later, when you maybe have forgotten about this content, I'm gonna hit you with a live, and we're gonna talk about it. And it offers like a chance to like revisit, and just a lot of energy goes back into repurposing that same piece of content, right? So I do love that, and I think that is super smart. And yes, 100%, 100%. Let's see if there's anything else on here. KJ Around the World says, it was short but necessary. I love repurposing for a book. Gotta put you on the acknowledgement page. Aw, thank you. I like my big vision, like once I retire at 40, I want to just like write leisurely, like not to, oh my gosh, I have to pay my bills, but like I want to just be able to like write about like things that I care about, or like dig into fiction. So for me, I'm always thinking about like, how can I make books like that? It's just a mindset thing. I just love writing and being an author. All right. So tip number 7. So idea number 7 is generating a lead magnet or a digital product as a result of your podcast episodes. So the lead magnet is the free route, meaning that you create a resource for your listeners, for your audience that solves a pain point or addresses a particular topic. And you offer that for free in exchange for their email address. A lot of times people will do things like checklists. You can do guides. If you just Google like digital products, you'll see a list. Planners also are very popular for this type of format. So you can repurpose your podcast episodes into other helpful resources to continue and further the conversation, right? So that's part one for the freebie part. But then part two, again, the money, we're here, I'm here for the money. So with that being said, you could create a paid digital offer, and that can include like an ebook. And one of my favorites is audio workshops or audio trainings or something audio. Like I think people who love audio are so inclined to actually like purchase an audio product. So I have a couple of audio products out there, and it does really well. People like the format, it's easy to consume. So you can again take your episode and inspire it and remix it into a paid offer or a free offer. So I love the free offer for growing your newsletter, and I love the paid offer for further transforming their lives and also making and generating income. Seven, as J Rock had mentioned, is Just Rock, yes, as Just Rock had mentioned, is blog posts. So blog posts are an invaluable way for podcasters to get in front of Google, and all the traffic that Google can be bringing to your show. So it's definitely, I would also say it's a time investment. So even if you have all the transcripts there and you like take your audio file and you transcribe it and you use that as a plate for your blog post template, it's still an art, right? And if there's still time, you have to review and revise. And it's definitely one of those things that you have to be intentional. And I would say you have to think about, is this what I want to pursue as a strategy? So don't do like, oh, I'll just do a blog post once in a while. No, I actually think of my blog post as like part of my workflow. So before an episode even goes out, the blog post is up on my site probably a month or a couple weeks later. That is a time commitment, and it's literally like another job. So I'm a blogger and a podcaster, but the results speak for itself. If you follow me on social media, which you all do, but I don't necessarily talk about my podcast a lot. Like I may mention it maybe once or twice a week if I think it's relevant, or I'm feeling like I want to share but it's not like I'm not like listen to my podcast. This is my podcast like every day, all day. No, I don't, because I focus on SEO. I focus on long form content like my blog, and leveraging that to grow my audience, and it works. Chef's kiss. So definitely understand that. What I will say, Just Rock, as a remix to that, one way that you can actually like turn that around is also pitching your podcast episode to publications. So you can say, listen, hey, like, are you looking for guest bloggers? Like, I'd love to contribute this article. You might even get paid for it as a freelance writer. Like, that's awesome. So you have like these long ideas that you've had on your podcast, and you can now offer it, in different publications. People are always looking for content. And if you have a blogging skill and you want to leverage that, then 100% go for that. So not only on your site, but also think off your site for different publications who are looking for content as well, as a great repurposing idea. Okay. Now, my bonus tip. This is like number 8 strategy that you could use is your newsletter. But I'm not talking about like our typical newsletters where we email them like once a week with our latest episode. I'm actually talking about using a newsletter that has a paywall component. So if you're familiar with Substack, which is my favorite, I love Substack so much. Substack is like a hybrid. It's like a newsletter and website in one. And they even have a paywall where you can say, hey, this content is for free and this content is paid. So if you are like, you know what? I would be motivated to have a newsletter if I could get people to contribute and, like if I can get some income coming in, then something like Substack would be a great asset. I like Substack also because all of your newsletters are public, meaning that people could find them through Google search. People could find them within the Substack network, which is super strong and super valuable. So there's just a lot more eyeballs on your newsletter when you use a platform like Substack versus when you use a platform other, I'm not going to name them, but other platforms. So other platforms, it's like you kind of have to like have gotten the email in your newsletter, like in your email inbox. Substack, you send an email, but it also lives on your site. So a good example of that is my newsletter, grantsforcreators.com, where I curate different grant opportunities for creators and small business owners. And you could literally go to grantsforcreators.com, and it's a full website. But when I do send out a newsletter, they get the newsletter directly in their inbox. And then there's a paid section. So I'm like, I'll give you a little bit of a taster for the freebies. And then if you want the whole entire newsletter, you can, become a subscriber. So this is a great opportunity for you to turn on your income stream if that's something that you want to pursue and do. So a good example of that again is grantsforcreators.com. It's my site. You can see how how it works for me. But again, there's thousands of creators on that platform. And I definitely see podcasters who are leveraging it in cool and different ways. I just want to give a quick shout out to some of my friends who do amazing work and use Substack as like their engine for their content. So, number one is Podcasters Getting Paid by Michelle Jackson. So, if you're interested in like monetization, that's a really great resource. Again, it's Podcasters Getting Paid. And then there's Black Pod News by the Black Podcasters Association. Another fantastic, like if you're looking for more content around like what's happening in the Black podcasting space, that's also an incredible newsletter. And they're all with Substack. So that's, I think when using Substack, it's good to look at what other people are doing to see like, to imagine like how you can use it and leverage it for your own content. All right. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that gave you some ideas. Let's see. Is there any other comments? Any other questions? So overall, like that was what I had for you today. I do have to run. I have like an interview and today's my pitching day, which I want to talk about next week. I want to talk about like how I leverage my pitch days to further my business. So that's like the next week's topic of discussion. And I'll go into detail of like what that looks like, why is pitching so important, and all that other stuff. But if there are no questions, actually, I do see a couple of questions here, comments. Okay, let's see. Detroit World Podcast says, because my podcast is interview based, I've pitched some of my episodes to various news outlets and have made new content based on the stories I've written. Exactly. I love that. I love how Worldwide Podcast, so Detroit Worldwide Podcast has said that they have pitched their podcast episodes to news outlets to get press, which is amazing, and also made new content and created new stories as a result of their podcast. So I think overall, the mindset reframe here is like, yes, we're podcasters and we create audio content, right? We create our episodes, but how can we reimagine that? How can we get the most life out of this content? Because it takes a lot of work for us to like put this together, even if it's an interview based show, right? Like crafting the story and recording and all of that. So let's do a quick recap and then I have to head out. So you can repurpose your podcast episodes to book chapters. You can do signature talks and speaking engagements. You could pitch brands and guest appearances based off of your body of work. You can create companion episodes that complement your interviews, especially. You can do live streams where you can chat with your community, engage with them, and refer them back to listening to your show. You can create a lead magnet or a digital product that you sell. That can be an amazing way for you to repurpose your podcast. Blog post, a guest post as well. You could pitch your podcast to different news publications and spin those into different stories. And then you could use your newsletter. You can, of course, use the ones that we all love in traditional ones, but use things like Substack that really allows you to like open up like a new income stream and just share your content in a different way. Lee says, great tips about Substack. Yes, I feel like it's so easy to use and get started. And I love the feature of being able to add a paywall for people who want to have exclusive access or who want to support you, right? I love that. I love that. Also, another quick tip about Substack is that Substack also has a podcast feature built into Substack. And if you have the Substack app, whatever newsletter you send out, they will read it out loud to you. Like I always I'm like, I don't want to read I don't want to read. So Substack reads to you, which is really helpful. So just check them out. They're doing a lot of cool stuff. Subscribe to some of these newsletters to see what they're all about and see if that's a good option for you. Okay. All right, that is all that I have for you today. I hope that this inspires you to think and reimagine your podcast into different ideas. And I, for one, am definitely using my podcast to launch this book and get this content out because book writing, although I love it, it's a lot of work and a lot of creativity. All right. So I will see you all next week. If you have any requests, like something that you feel like you want to talk about, uh, definitely let me know. I'm interested in talking about like pitch days, how important that is. And I also am interested in talking about like reconstructing our podcast frequency, meaning like we always hear you should be like submitting your show on the same day at the same time every week or bi-weekly. And I have thoughts about that. Like I have thoughts. I things are changing. Things are changing. So let me know if any of those topics resonate with you, if you have any topics you want to see in the future. And yeah, I will see you all next week. So have a wonderful day and talk to you all very